Pope Francis embarked on an extraordinary whirlwind visit to the revered Catholic shrine of Fatima, drawing attention once again to one of the Church's most enigmatic mysteries, the third secret of Fatima. This secret has captivated the imagination and curiosity of believers worldwide for generations, shrouded in layers of secrecy, doubt, and speculation. It wasn't until the shocking and nearly fatal event involving Pope John Paul II that the Vatican finally allowed the secret to be partially unveiled. However, what was revealed seemed only to scratch the surface of the full story. Our Lady of Fatima represents much more than just a prophecy. She stands as a beacon of justice, protection, and hope for the faithful, something Pope Francis has continuously reminded the world. For years, the secret was hidden, kept away from public view, only to be revealed in fragmented pieces. Now, with Pope Francis's visit to Fatima, the devotion to the Virgin Mary takes on an even deeper significance, intertwining both time and place. The bond between the current Pope and his revered predecessor, St. John Paul II, comes alive in a profound way. As the spiritual heir to John Paul II, Pope Francis also shares a deep, personal devotion to Our Lady of Fatima. His words during his papal inauguration hinted at this connection when he addressed the crowds from the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica and proclaimed, "Tomorrow I wish to go and pray to Our Lady." True to his word, Pope Francis made his way to the papal Basilica of St. Mary Major, where he prayed before the image of Mary, the protector of the Roman people. Since then, this act has become a personal ritual for him, visiting St. Mary Major over 100 times, making it the most visited place by any recent pope, aside from their official residences. The connection between Fatima and Pope John Paul II is inseparable. Following the harrowing assassination attempt in 1981, John Paul credited the miraculous intervention of Our Lady of Fatima for his survival. "One hand fired the bullet, another guided it," he famously said, acknowledging her protective presence on the day that could have ended his life. In an act of deep reverence, the Pope later gifted the bullet to the Bishop of Leiria Fatima, which was embedded into the crown of the statue of Our Lady of Fatima. It became a symbolic gesture of his gratitude and his unshakable faith in her intervention. John Paul II's return to Fatima during the Great Jubilee year of 2000 further solidified this bond. His beatification of Francisco and Jacinta Marto and the revelation of the third secret that same year were monumental moments in church history. His survival from the 1981 assassination attempt, which he read as a fulfillment of the third secret's prophecy, only added to the sense of divine purpose guiding his papacy. Upon his arrival in Fatima on May 12, 2000, John Paul presented a personal gift, a ring given to him by Cardinal Stefan Wyszynski at the time of his Pectin election in 1978. Wyszynski, a towering figure in the Polish church, had told John Paul that it was his mission to guide the church into the third millennium. The Pope's journey, which nearly ended tragically in 1981, was a testament to the fulfillment of this prophecy, made possible through the intercession of Our Lady of Fatima. Pope Francis, as a spiritual successor, bears witness to all these historic and miraculous events. His devotion to the Virgin Mary echoes the same deep-rooted faith that guided his predecessor. But Pope Francis's visit comes at a time of increasing turmoil in the world, marked by unrest, violence, and uncertainty. The chaos in society is unmistakable, and recent global events such as the polarizing political crisis involving Donald Trump have only heightened the sense of unease about humanity's future. At Fatima, Pope Francis led the faithful in reciting the Rosary, consecrating the Church and the world to the Blessed Virgin Mary. The atmosphere was somber, with millions joining in a collective prayer for peace, particularly for war-torn nations. As the Pope prayed in the Chapel of Apparitions, a palpable silence filled the space, reflecting the sorrow and hope carried by every individual present. His prayer, though silent, echoed the weight of the fourth mystery of the Rosary recited shortly after, encapsulating a universal plea for an end to the suffering caused by war. For those of you watching, I invite you to close your eyes, take a deep breath, and join in these words of prayer. With childlike hearts, we consecrate to you our lives forever. To you, we consecrate the Church and the world, especially those countries at war. Obtain peace for us. Virgin of the way, open paths where it seems that none exist. These final words exude unwavering trust in the power of the Virgin Mary's intercession, transcending any force of evil. You who untie knots, loosen the tangles of self-interest and the snares of power. You, never outdone in generosity, fill us with tenderness, fill us with hope, and lead us to the eternal joy of the gospel. Amen. The third secret of Fatima is now revealed. The third secret of Fatima was held by the only one of the children, Sister Lucia. She was ordered in 1944 by her bishop to write out the third secret, and did so in holy obedience. In 2000, the Vatican released the text of her statement, along with a commentary by Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, who would later be elected Pope 15th. This is Sister Lucia's description of what was revealed. I write in obedience to you, my God, who commands me to do so through His Excellency, the Bishop of Liria, and through your most holy mother and mine. After the two parts which I have already explained, at the left of Our Lady and a little above, we saw an angel with a flaming sword in his left hand. Flashing, it gave out flames that looked as though they would set the world on fire. But they died out in contact with the splendor that Our Lady radiated towards him from her right hand. Pointing to the earth with his right hand, the angel cried out in a loud voice, "Penance, penance, penance." And we saw in an immense light that is God, something similar to how people appear in a mirror when they pass in front of it, a bishop dressed in white. We had the impression that it was the Holy Father, other bishops, priests, men and women religious, going up a steep mountain at the top of which there was a big cross of rough-hewn trunks, as of a cork tree with the bark. Before reaching there, the Holy Father passed through a big city, half in ruins and half trembling with halting steps, afflicted with pain and sorrow. He prayed for the souls of the corpses he met on his way. Having reached the top of the mountain on his knees at the foot of the big cross, he was killed by a group of soldiers who fired bullets and arrows at him. And in the same way there died one after another the other bishops, priests, men and women, religious, and various lay people of different ranks and positions. Beneath the two arms of the cross, there were two angels each with a crystal aspersorium in his hand, in which they gathered up the blood of the martyrs, and with it sprinkled the souls that were making their way to God. Then let's look at the Vatican's interpretation through the Cardinal's reaction. Turning to the content of the third secret, the Cardinal writes that the prophetic vision which was disclosed to the three young children who saw the Virgin Mary at Fatima was a preview of the 20th century. The Cardinal writes, "In the vision we can recognize the last century as a century of martyrs, a century of suffering and persecution for the Church, a century of world wars and the many local wars which filled the last 50 years and have inflicted unprecedented forms of cruelty." That vision is coupled with Mary's plea for prayer and penance, Cardinal Ratzinger continues, and taken as a whole, the Fatima message is a strong reminder that the crises of the world must finally be resolved not through armed force, but through prayer and reliance on God's grace. Thus, despite its violent imagery and its strong warning tone, the Fatima's message concludes with a note of confidence: "My Immaculate Heart will triumph." To understand the signs of the times, the Cardinal writes, means to accept the urgency of penance, of conversion, of faith. This is the correct response to this moment of history, characterized by the grave perils outlined in the images that follow. The Cardinal's words, which offer at least some comfort, are lent weight by a very interesting revelation he added. Cardinal Ratzinger discloses that he spoke with Sister Lucia, the sole surviving Fatima seer, about the content of the entire Fatima message. He reports that Sister Lucia said that it appeared ever more clearly to her that the purpose of all the apparitions was to help people to grow more and more in faith, hope, and love. Everything else was intended to lead to this. During the Beatification homily, John Paul II made highly interesting references, which are likely related to it. Above all, he made it clear that the Fatima message is a call to conversion. Moreover, the pontiff confirmed some particular aspects of the three secrets: Jacinta's and Francisco's premature deaths, the 20th century's terrible wars and persecutions, the need to pray to shorten the evils against man, and the attack that he himself suffered in 1981 in the Vatican. He also quoted the Apocalypse when it speaks of the dragon, which symbolizes evil, and he affirmed that when man puts God to one side, he cannot find happiness, but on the contrary, ends in self-destruction. The confirmation of the second secret of Fatima, which refers to the world wars, was alluded to indirectly by the Pope when he said, "How many victims there have been in this last century of the second millennium? I am thinking of the horrors of the two great wars and other conflicts in other parts of the world. I am also thinking of the concentration camps and the extermination, the gulags, the ethnic cleansing, the persecutions, terrorism, kidnappings, drugs, attacks on the life of the unborn and against the family." The Holy Father recalled Jacinta's words, who said, referring to Francisco, that the Virgin has come to see us and has said that very soon she will come to take him. Prophesied the tribulations of these times, and the Virgin asked for prayers to shorten these evils. He added that because of this, I want to thank God for having saved me from death on May 13, 1981. I also express my appreciation to Blessed Jacinta for the sacrifices and prayers for the Pope, whom she saw suffer. The truth beyond the purported the third secret of Fatima. The first point to make is that it is not a specific prediction of future events, including the attempt on Pope John II's life. This makes all the more sense if we consider the nature of prophecy in the Bible. The prophets came not to predict the future, but to call the people to return to the timeless faith and belief they already know, but have perhaps fallen away from, or in the worlds of the future Pope. The vision speaks of dangers and how we might be saved from them. He notes that the figure of the angel with the flaming sword is a common image in the book of Revelation, which represents the threat of judgment which looms over the world. But he also notes how the threat is balanced by the splendor of the Mother of God. In the vision, we can recognize the last century as a century of martyrs, a century of suffering and persecution for the Church, a century of world wars and the many local wars which filled the last 50 years and have inflicted unprecedented forms of cruelty, Cardinal Ratzinger writes. However, he concludes, the vision ends with a powerful expression of hope, echoing the Virgin's promise that, "My immaculate heart with triumph, you have an inner compass, so do I." Regardless of what earthly system of dogmas you follow, if any, you and I still have an innate sense of what is right and wrong. It is our choice of whether to follow our compass or go off in some other direction. The third secret tells us that what we do with our compass matters. It matters hugely, in fact. The future of our people and our world depends on our choices, however powerless and futile we consider ourselves to make change. Fatima tells us that there are invisible forces behind visible events, and our contribution to those forces is significant. For all we know, our contribution may be decisive. Sister Lucia said that it appeared ever more clearly to her that the purpose of all the apparitions was to help people to grow more and more in faith, hope, and love. Everything else was intended to lead to this. Pope John Paul II gives us the key. Dollinger and Pope Benedict XVI's Holy See Press Office issued a response that Pope Benedict XVI declares never to have spoken with Professor Dollinger about Fatima, clearly affirming that the remarks attributed to Professor Dollinger on the matter are pure inventions, absolutely untrue. And he confirms decisively that the publication of the third secret of Fatima is complete. And Cardinal Tarcisio Bertones said, one of the reasons the third secret was made public in 2000 was that people were spreading absurd theses about catastrophic events or heresy at the top levels of the Church. Cardinal Bertone, who was personally involved in the publication of the third secret, said he was puzzled that some still think the Vatican is hiding something. In 2006, an Italian journalist wrote a book titled The Fourth Secret of Fatima that laid out a Vatican conspiracy theory, prompting a new round of publicity. In 2007, Cardinal Bertone wrote his own book, The Last Visionary of Fatima, which reiterated the official version of the Fatima messages and secrets, and was based, he said, on long conversations with Carmelite Sister Lucia dos Santos, the last of the visionaries to die. In TV appearances, the Cardinal strongly denied theories of a Vatican cover-up. Pope Benedict was also personally involved in publishing the third secret. Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, the Vatican's top doctrinal official, presented the text of the secret to the press and wrote a lengthy commentary about it. That news conference on June 26, 2000 is still memorable for Vatican journalists. The stage was set for the disclosure of a text that for decades was thought to be too disturbing to reveal. But instead, Cardinal Ratzinger began by deflating expectations and announcing that there was nothing apocalyptic. No great mystery is revealed, nor is the future unveiled, he said. He went on to give a theological framework to the apparitions and messages of Fatima, insisting that in the church tradition, prophecy is not like a film preview, but more like offering signs that can be useful for Christians. Cardinal Ratzinger said that was how to understand the third secret's vision of a bishop in white who struggles up a hill amid corpses of slain martyrs and then falls dead after being shot by soldiers. Whether this bishop symbolized Pope John Paul II, who was shot and wounded on May 13, 1981. Father Nicholas Gruner, a Canadian priest who founded the Fatima Crusader magazine, has long maintained that Russia has yet to be consecrated to Mary following the instructions of Our Lady of Fatima. Father Gruner said, "We haven't had the conversion of Russia by any stretch of the imagination, not militarily, not morally. It's the largest abortion capital of the world. ... There's just no sign of conversion in any sense. That's another issue the Vatican is tired of dealing with." Church officials say Pope John Paul II in 1984 led the world's bishops in the consecration of Russia and the world. The late Sister Lucia, one of the 3 Portuguese children who saw Mary in 1917 and the one who received the instructions for the consecration, had said that it was properly performed. You know, the third secret concerns the infallible definitions of the faith, and that definitions by their very nature have to say what the truth is, and therefore by strict logical implication, what the error is, and that the error is condemned. If a person stubbornly holds on to a condemned error after he has been informed of the infallible truth, then he cannot be saved unless he repents before he dies. And so it is our duty to witness to the truths of our faith and to protect the little ones from errors against the faith by defending the faith bicistrum. That's why the Church anathematized those errors and those clergy and laity who stubbornly hold on to them. We know what the third secret is, because Pope John Paul II has revealed to us what it is. Pope John Paul II warned us in May 2000 about the dangers to the faith in our day by citing in his sermon, which predicted that 1/3 of the stars of heaven would be taken down to earth by the tail of the dragon, and the Pope indicates to us that the danger is now. Catholic commentaries have traditionally interpreted this passage as referring to 1/3 of the clergy as undermining both the Catholic faith and the salvation of souls by working for the devil. And we also know from other reliable sources, including Cardinal Ratzinger, when he said the third secret refers to the dangers threatening the faith and the fate and life of the Christian, and therefore the life of the world. We also know it from Father Malachi Martin, as I told above, when Our Lady said, "In Portugal, the dogma of the faith will always be preserved." What do you think it means? It means that the dogma of the faith will always be preserved. What do you think it means? It means that the dogma of the faith will not be preserved in various or many other parts of the world, because the clergy and faithful are not adhering to the solemn definitions. The third secret concerns the undermining of the Catholic faith throughout Europe and possibly throughout much of the world. If the people adhered to the infallible definitions, they would retain the faith. To safeguard your Catholic faith, you need your own efforts to live a good Catholic life and to read solid Catholic material, to avoid bad books, magazines, TV programs, and to avoid also people who undermine your Catholic faith. But you also need grace. To obtain this grace, you must pray, especially the daily rosary. To avoid being confused, do not follow the false shepherds and the heretics who claim to speak to a deeper understanding of the gospel. If they followed the infallible definitions of the dogmas of the faith, the faithful would judge everything according to what is right and what is wrong in the light of the gospel and of the infallible definitions that explain the gospel. They would know if something was of the faith or not, and they would know when the other person speaking was in error, no matter what their position and stature in the church was. And they would be able to determine what is wrong, What is against the faith? Because the definitions are infallible. That is, they cannot fail. A pope can fail at times. At times, an ecumenical council can fail. A cardinal, a bishop, a priest, or a layperson can fail. But the solemn definitions of the pope alone, or the pope together with an ecumenical council, can never fail. This is what Our Lady of Fatima came to warn us about, and to tell us what to do to preserve our own souls and to preserve as many souls of the people around us as we can. And this is what the third secret is about in a few words, and we're on solid ground. The question now is, what can we do about it to save our souls? As I said before, pray the rosary daily and learn the dogmas of the Catholic faith, especially the infallible definitions. What did the secret of Fatima say? Church, and it's time to reveal. You know, the secret of Our Lady has been hidden for a long time because those who hold the secret in their hands keep saying their Haskikpamna. It was not until 2000 that Pope John Paul II revealed what was hidden inside the sealed envelope about the secret of Fatima. These secrets are said to be related to hell, World Wars I, and the persecutions that Christians faced in the 20th century. The first secret or vision was of hell. Lucia wrote that the Blessed Virgin showed the children what hell was like, complete with the suffering experienced by the souls who are there. The vision lasted only a second, but the children say that it was almost unbearable. It led to a great trust in the promise of Mary to lead her devotees to Christ, to save souls from this great eternal suffering. In the vision revealing the second secret, the Blessed Virgin shows the young children a vision in which they learn that World War I, which is going on during the time of the visions, will end. However, another world war will ensue under the papacy of Pope Pius XI, who reigned from 1922 until 1939. Unless people stop offending God and Russia is converted. The Virgin asked that Russia be consecrated to her Immaculate Heart. And you know what a coincidence happened? It was World War II that began in 1939, just as Our Lady had predicted. And that leads us to the third secret, the one that gets all the attention. Sister Lucia didn't want to share the third secret, but was asked to write it down by the Bishop of Leiria. And this document remained sealed until 2000. The third secret of Fatima was finally disclosed in 2000 on the day of the beatification of Francisco and Jacinta Escray. Lucia wrote, "The third part of the secret revealed at the Cova de Iria Fatima on 13th July 1917. I write in obedience to you, my God, who command me to do so through His Excellency the Bishop of Leiria and through your most holy mother and mine." After the two parts which I have already explained, at the left of Our Lady and a little above, we saw an angel with a flaming sword in his left hand, flashing. It gave out flames that looked as though they would set the world on fire, but they died out in contact with the splendor that Our Lady radiated towards him from her right hand. Pointing to the earth with his right hand, the angel cried out in a loud voice, "Penance, penance, penance." And we saw in an immense light that is God, something similar to how people appear in a mirror when they pass in front of it. A bishop dressed in white. We had the impression that it was the Holy Father. Other bishops, priests, men and women religious going up a steep mountain, at the top of which there was a big cross of rough-hewn trunks as of a cork tree with a bark. Before reaching there, the Holy Father passed through a big city half in ruins and half trembling with halting steps. Afflicted with pain and sorrow, he prayed for the souls of the corpses he met on his way. Having reached the top of the mountain, on his knees at the foot of the big cross, he was killed by a group of soldiers who fired bullets and arrows at him. And in the same way there died one after another the other bishops, priests, men and women, religious and various lay people of different ranks and positions. Beneath the two arms of the cross there were two angels, each with a crystal aspersorium in his hand, in which they gathered up the blood of the martyrs, and with it sprinkled the souls that were making their way to God. The little shepherds lived God's passion for humanity, and so they were chosen and constituted as prophets of God's love and offered and proposed by him to the world as children shepherds after his own heart. Our Lady of Fatima urgently desired for all of faithful to pray daily for the salvation of poor sinners and for the whole world. That message from our Mother Mary is a challenge, no matter where you are in your own personal prayer life, to go deeper, to pray often and with greater fervor. Some of us may not pray all that often except when in great need. Now it is time to dust off that rosary that has been sitting on the shelf since it was received at confirmation. Others of us may have a deep devotion to the rosary already, in which case the message of Fatima calls us to approach our prayer life with a new ardor. This new ardor would look differently for each individual, but may include things like adopting new devotional practices, recommitting ourselves to attentiveness during times of prayer, or perhaps even increasing the frequency of times dedicated to the Lord and Our Lady in prayer. But remember this, prophecy is not scriptures. Just trust the Lord and we'll be good.